if I am a politician, right, that means I have influence.
Right.
So another definition of influence or leadership is really power.
Yes.
So what do we do with the power or the influence that God has given us? Because it's influencing people, right?
Because God is saying, if I, who have all power,
Right.
can submit myself to serve,
Right.
I don't want anybody here getting a big head
Right.
about now that you're in a position, whether it's representative, congressman,
Right.
governor, president, that you are too high to serve someone in that state.
So as Christ followers, watch this, we are supposed to be ambassadors,
Okay.
right? Which means we don't live for ourselves, we actually live for someone else.
So we have people that are in leadership roles and positions, but the character, which is what we're trying to talk about here, the being, but who you're becoming is more important than what you do. It's how do kingdom-minded leaders balance influence without falling into political or just worldly compromise?
I love that.
Hey family, what's going on? Welcome to this next episode of Kingdom Over Politics. Now I have a confession. The first few minutes of this episode that you're about to see, the audio was bad. So I'm giving you a quick summary here so you don't have to fast forward and miss the important conversation that Richard Hellen and myself had. Richard Hellen is an author, a coach, a mentor, certified John Maxwell trainer, as well as an Army veteran, husband, father, all the above. And you know, when you get two veterans together, you're always going to have a great conversation. And what he spoke about, he shared how the Army taught him how to do leadership, but it didn't teach him how to be a leader. It wasn't until after he retired and he was getting these 1-minute emails from John Maxwell that he finally opened them and finally decided to pursue that. And it changed his life and transformed the way that he became a leader. So that's where we pick up in right here. Check this out.
So profound. And so every day I would go to my email to catch this 1 minute. Then as I started watching him, I realized by that time he had wrote about 40, 50 books, and he had all different programs. And so I began to get engaged with him, began to read his books. And that's when my leadership journey really began, when I began to read his books and read about who a leader has to become. And leadership is really about servitude. Mm-hmm. It's not about what I get. It's about really what I give. And that changed my whole perspective. So he has a program where you become a coach. And so I think in 2015, I signed up to become a John Maxwell speaker, trainer, coach. And from there, I just kind of took off with it. So that was a great perspective. And I love that you touched on something that I naturally have become aware of in the last 5 years and that I teach from as well. And that is the be, do, have model. Yeah. Right. And so that's a great thing. And so with that, John Maxwell talks about, from his perspective, that leadership is influence, right? Nothing more, nothing less. That's correct. How has your faith influenced the way that you lead and how you teach others to lead? That's a really good question. Your faith has to be who you are. All right. And so your faith becomes your principles, right? It becomes your inner being. It becomes everything that you do. And so as you begin to make decisions, that's where those decisions are birthed from. And so I often think about Galatians 5:22, when Paul talks about the fruits of the Spirit, right? Those are principal things of who we should be as Christ followers. So as Christ followers, watch this, we are supposed to be ambassadors, okay, right? Which means we don't live for ourselves, we actually live for someone else. So in the military, we deploy to various places and they give us classes. And the reason they give us classes is because the military knows and understands that if I go to another country and I operate inappropriately, that's a reflection upon the United States. Right. Right. So that's why they give you those classes. And so it's, in principle, it's the same way when we become a follower of Christ. We recognize that we are ambassadors for him and that everything we do is a reflection of our relationship with him. So we want to do the best that we can. And sometimes we fall short to represent those things that are written in Galatians, the 5th chapter, and the 22nd verse. When we make decisions, it comes from that. And so one day I had a friend of mine who was who was mad at somebody. He was talking about something he was going to do. I said, that sounds good. I said, can I ask you a question? He said, yeah. I said, what fruit of the Spirit is that?
Oh,
okay. So that's where that stuff comes from. It's birthed from that.
awesome, man. I appreciate your analogies and stories. We're probably going to do this all day. As a veteran myself, when you shared about the classes that we take when we're going to deploy, what popped in my head was customs and courtesies.
Customs and courtesies.
Right?
That's right.
So we have to learn the customs and courtesies to make sure we're appropriate. Because when you go to another place, even if it's in the United States, TDY, wherever you go, you're wearing the uniform.
Right.
And that uniform on one side has the branch of service and the other side has your last name.
Right.
And so as believers, we wear the uniform all the time. We don't get to take it off.
That's right.
And we have to make sure that we are abiding by those customs and courtesies. And so I love that. And that goes back to in the 5th chapter of Matthew, and Jesus is talking to us and he's giving the pep talk and he's reminding us who we are. We are the salt and light of the world, right? So when we are out here living life and leading other people, what do we want them to see? Do we want them to see salt and light, or are they just supposed to see business as usual, leadership as usual? I say what I want. I do what I want to do when I'm mad or when I'm angry, whether it's not a fruit or not, or,
Right.
So with that being said, from your perspective, how does leadership shape culture? Because both in the church and society at large, we're seeing leaders who are now seeking to redefine what leadership looks like or how behavior of a leader should be interpreted. So what does it mean to you for leadership in your perspective of culture?
That's a very interesting question. Well, when you look at leadership as a whole, it's influence. And it has a very broad perspective or impact on a culture. So let's say from a political landscape, right? If I am a politician, right, that means I have influence. Right. And depending upon where I'm grounded at, is going to determine the type of influence that I have with the people that I call myself leading. So am I grounded and rooted in love, or am I grounded and rooted in hate? Because I have influence, it's going to influence the people that's following me, and they're going to follow suit with however it is that I lead. That's the thing we have to really consider with this thing that we call influence, because another definition of influence or leadership is really power.
Yes.
So what do we do with the power or the influence that God has given us? Because it's influencing people, right? And so what a good leader does with power or with influence, he empowers and influences other people in a righteous way. And so that's what Jesus did. So here is Jesus, God incarnated in the flesh. He gets with Peter. Now watch this leadership principle. He tells Peter to wash my feet. Peter said, I'm not washing your feet. You are my master. All right? I should be washing your feet, but no, he said, Peter, wash my feet. He said, no, Peter, let me wash your feet. Peter said, no, I should be washing your feet. It doesn't seem like it would go that way. The leader is asking to wash your feet. Right? But what he's doing is he's getting ready to take his influence and empower Peter.
Right.
That's what we do with influence. We take it and we empower people, right? So he said, Peter, you don't understand what I'm doing. He said, what I'm doing is I'm showing you how this leadership things work so you know how to wash other people's feet. I'm teaching you how to serve. And if you see me serve and I'm Jesus, then what's your excuse? And so we take those things and we use them to empower people in a good way, coming hopefully from love, so that it influences people with the right perspective.
That's a great story and great answer, because you said that one of the definitions of leadership is power.
It's power.
And so in that example that you just gave, God being all-knowing knows that. And so he had to humble himself and take the lowest position. He took the position of the house slave.
Oh, yes.
And we look at it, we think of washing feet like we're giving somebody a pedicure, right? But no, what Jesus was doing, he was washing the leg. He was washing the leg because all the dirt and mud that gets caked on there. So you take the position of the slave in the house, the lowest ranked person in the house, and you're washing the legs and feet of some grown men that's been walking around. And the beauty in that illustration, as you said, was because God is saying, if I, who have all power,
Right.
can submit myself to serve,
Right.
I don't want anybody here getting a big head
Right.
about now that you're in a position, whether it's representative, congressman,
Right.
governor, president, that you're too high to serve someone in that state. I want to shift this a little bit because, of course, I love the conversation about politics and politicians and how they serve and the culture we set, because that is important and that is what we're here for, Kingdom Over Politics. But you and I had a conversation prior to the recording. We had an excellent conversation. That's why I said, man, two bald men that love Christ coming up next. That's going to be our spinoff. But we had a great conversation about marriage and family. So I'm going to ask you, as an ad lib, now frame for us, for the audience, how you look at that leadership and shaping the culture of your family or shaping the culture of a family.
Yeah, so leadership begins with the leader of the household, which is supposed to be the man, right? And how we lead is going to influence and impact how our family directly sees us based upon how it is that we lead. And so the Bible says that without a vision, a people perish. Watch this. Without a vision, a marriage perishes. Without a vision, a family perishes. Without a vision, a business perishes. Without a vision, a church perishes, right? Because a vision shows us where we're going. So as a leader of my household, I need to have a vision for my wife. Yes. I need to have a vision for my children. So watch this. How can I ask my wife to follow me and I don't know where I'm going?
Right.
Follow me. But I have nowhere to take her. She's going to be reluctant to follow me. My children are going to be reluctant to follow me. So as men, we need to have a vision and also lead by example. So when you walk into my home, we call it an oath. It's an oath that's written on a wall. It's probably 14 by 24. You can't miss it when you walk in a house. And it has 10 things on it that we agreed to before we got married. And the very bottom of it, we both signed it. So the first thing on there is that divorce is not an option. The second thing is my wife is my next of kin, which simply means that my wife comes before my mother. My wife comes before my father. My wife comes before my children. And so anytime we get that backwards, our household is out of order. You got God, the husband, the wife, the children, and your mom, your dad, all that comes way down here.
All of that.
Right? But when that's out of order, the household is out of order. And that doesn't mean we negate our mother. That doesn't mean we negate our father.
Right.
So here's what it looks like in practicality. Let's say my mom calls me. She says she needs $100. That's no big deal. Hey, Mom, let me call you right back. I need to run that by the wife. And then I'll call you back.
Right.
She don't just get it because she asks. It goes through the woman of the household. I took an oath or a covenant with her before God, right?
Sir.
And so it goes through her. And so that's like the vision that we've written. One of them is what you just mentioned. We won't go to bed mad. That's one thing we agree to. We agree to sexual exclusion, meaning I'm only going to be intimate with my wife. We agree to one of them that you just mentioned earlier, which I thought was really powerful. It says we seek to understand before we understood. All that simply means is if my wife says something to me, my goal is to repeat it back to her. Because I want to make sure I understand what you're saying before I actually respond. And my goal is to understand you before you understand me.
Right.
And so you have those principles and those things that are laid out, and there are guidelines to keep you on the right track. But without that, you know, the Bible says a man weighs the right in his own eyesight. And so without some type of principles and some type of guidelines to guide us, we're just going to falter short. And that's with anything in life, with a business, with a ministry, in politics, anything in life. If we don't have something that's guiding us,
absolutely,
we're going to resort to
our default, which is a whole bunch of stuff.
Which should be a whole bunch of stuff. And usually it's about self-satisfaction.
Correct. Or right? Self-preservation.
Or self-preservation, right.
And one of the things I love about what you shared in that family culture dynamic of leadership is because in today's world, many times people want to take your answer, and we'll probably see some comments on it, but people would take your answer and try to label it as toxic masculinity. And it's like, and no way is no way is saying from a biblical model and standard that the man is in charge of the home, which means responsible. It's not just, I want steak for dinner, so that's what I get. It's a huge responsibility.
Right.
So I love how you articulate that, but you're also showing like, I'm not just, making demands as a leader of my home. I'm loving on my wife. I'm putting my wife first. There's respect already included. You mentioned Galatians 5:22, the fruits of the Spirit. And the first one is?
Love.
Right. So it's not just asking someone to submit and follow an ungodly standard or someone who's going to take advantage. And we need as culture to see that more than what we're seeing it. And even in politics, because, we look at what's going on in Texas right now. We have an attorney general who's in the middle of an ugly divorce and whose wife is also a politician and on the grounds of an unbiblical marriage. But so we have people that are in leadership roles and positions, but the character, which is what we're trying to talk about here, the being, goes back to the beginning of the conversation. You can do a lot of stuff,
right?
But who you're becoming is more important than what you do.
In the military, we have a leadership model in the Army. It reminded me of something you just said, and I didn't understand it at the time. But the leadership model in the military is be, know, do.
Okay.
Be has to do with character.
Good.
Know has to do with competence. So be, know, do has to do with actions.
Man, I tell you what, I've learned a lot more about the Army today than I ever have. I got a little bit more respect for the Army. Being an Air Force guy, I was like, you know what? They actually learning some good stuff.
Yeah, it's some pretty good stuff in there, man. It's some pretty good stuff in there.
So now that we've jumped into this question already, but I'm going to ask you formally for your opinion on this, and that is, how do kingdom-minded leaders balance influence without falling into political or just worldly compromise?
I love that. I just happened to look this up before I came here. I was looking at something. How can I place this? So you have something called values.
Yes.
Right? So here's how I define values. Watch this. Values are guided principles that are non-compromising.
Okay. Non-negotiables.
They're non-negotiables, right? So when that's rooted, it don't matter what situation I'm in. I'm going to operate out my values.
Right.
Watch this. But when values are absent, I can be influenced by lobbyists. When value is absent, I can be influenced by donors. When values are absent, I can be influenced by the governor. When values are absent, I can be influenced by my friends. But when values are present, the situation don't matter because my values are going to kick in. And I'm not going to compromise my values for money. I'm not going to compromise my values for extra influence, right?
Yes.
I'm going to do what I need to do because my values guide me. So one day I was working, this wasn't that long ago, about maybe 8, 9, maybe a year ago. And I got a customer to sign a contract. But when it went to the front office, they recognized that either I had her signed in the wrong spot or something on the contract was wrong. So watch this. So my boss called me. He said, man, I'm grateful you got the contract signed, but X was wrong on the contract. So you have to send it back to her so she can re-sign it. He said, just give her a call and tell her it was a computer glitch and have her re-sign the contract. This is my boss. I said, okay, watch this. I said, boss, I'm not calling her and telling her that it was a computer glitch. I said, I'm gonna call her and tell her that I made a mistake and she'll re-sign it. He says, oh. But when you're not rooted in your values and your boss asks you to do something that compromises those values because they're not rooted in you, they're negotiable.
Right.
They're not non-negotiable. You succumb to pressure.
Right. So what I love about this, and again, I say we could do our own, we could do this for 5 hours. Don't get two veterans in the room.
Yeah, you succumb to pressure, man.
So when you described that, when you first started answering the question, I thought about core values. The Army has its core values.
Yeah.
Air Force has its core values. And what it does is it goes back to our earlier analogy, right? That we have the customs and courtesies.
Yeah.
we wear the uniform, and we must live out those values. And what's important is it doesn't matter the environment that we're in, the circumstances. When you sign an oath, because we take an oath,
Right.
that we sign with blood, we put our life on the line. We take this oath and say we're going to do this regardless.
Right.
Regardless of, here's the thing, I have to explain this to civilians. When you take an oath as a service member, they all end with you're going to honor the commander in chief. It doesn't say if it's
Democrat,
the Democratic
Republican,
Party or Republican or independent or the person you voted for.
Don't matter.
You're not obligated to have an allegiance to a party. In the military, as a service member, you honor the commander in chief because that's the values of the service. You are to continually honor that. And so it made me think when you were speaking is, what would it look like if our leaders and politicians said, I'm going to honor my values, not just for the people that voted for me, but
right.
in all reality, when you're elected in office, you're elected by the people, for the people, not just the people you agree with. So like you said earlier, the pressure, the lobbyists, none of that should matter because you should stop and say, what's best for this district, this state, this nation, not my own interests or my friends. So how do you think we got to a place where that is no longer commonplace?
It's real simple, man. When it comes to leadership, it's really, particularly in this climate we're in, it's really about two things. It's about power and money. And when that's your core, right, that's what you succumb to. So when people see how much money they can make by supporting this policy or supporting this, they succumb to that. And so we have sold our soul for fame. Look at the internet. Look at the young ladies on the internet that are basically naked. They've sold their soul for fame, for money, right? So it's like that in almost every aspect of life. If you're not grounded and rooted in the values that God has given you, then you're going to succumb to whatever approaches you because there's nothing in you to refrain you from doing that. And so Paul said it like this, and this is what I live by. Paul said it like this. He said, I say the truth in Christ, I lie not. He said, my conscience bears me witness. So when I do something that's not right, and I make mistakes, my conscience bothers me. But when we get to a point in our culture where you can make a policy, you can create something that hurts a group of people, and it doesn't bother you, that's dangerous. That means your conscience has been seared.
Whoa.
It don't even bother you. So we've gotten to this place because we're not a people no more of values. It's about money and it's about power.
I agree. Last two questions. And this is great segue. You brought up how you use as an example, just an organic example of how some young ladies are exposing themselves online. So my question is, how can we, as in us and others, train up the next generation of leaders to influence culture with integrity, with courage, and with their faith?
This is going to be something probably a little different than you might be expecting. Particularly in the Black culture, we have to fix the family unit.
Okay.
Yeah, because we're expecting a single mom to do a whole lot, and it's almost impossible for her to sustain with the things that she has to do for us, trying to work, trying to take care of a young man and a young woman, depending on how many kids she has. So I think all of this stuff for me starts with us fixing the family dynamic within the Black culture. We got to get to a point when we say I do, we mean it, right? And just because things go south, we just can't pick up and run, right? Because we're destroying a family like that. And so for me, it starts with the family and with the man and the woman instilling those things, integrity, right? Honor. And you instill those things in your children. Or if not, if the family unit is broken, where do we expect our children to learn integrity from? Where are they going to learn honesty from, right? Where are they going to learn commitment from, right? Where are they going to learn those things from? So my son, when he graduated high school, he took some kind of test when he joined the Air Force. And it said that he was 33. He was 18. But maturity-wise, he was 33. Why? Because he had a dad that was invested.
Right.
He had a dad that was invested in it. And so for me, those things start with us fixing this family unit thing. We can't keep having all these single parent households. The Black family has the highest single household rate of any other racial dynamic. We have the highest divorce rate of any other racial dynamic, right? And so it's difficult to teach those things when the household is broken, because the household to me is the foundation.
It's the school.
And when that's broken, I mean, what else can we resort to, right? So we have to find a way to fix that. And I think conversations like this, us investing in different groups and mentoring people, hopefully all of that's not in vain, and that it helps people, giving people tools to sustain within a relationship before they get married. Here's some things you need to do. Here's some things you need to consider. But to me, it starts with that. Or if not, they're going to pick those things up from Instagram.
Yeah, that's a great answer. I will say, to your point, the kitchen table is supposed to be the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's supposed to be where we talk about our day, we learn. You get a chance to see how your kids think, how they're being influenced. If they've had a bad day or they had something happen and they had a certain reaction, you're like, where did they get that from? You get a chance to not necessarily scold them, but work through it. You can pray at the table. You can read a scripture. You can say, hey, let's see what the Bible says. In our house, one of the things, since you brought it up earlier, one of the things that we use as a way to check each other is fruits of the Spirit. So we allow that even from the kids. So if someone is saying or acting in a way that's outside of that, you don't have to say, hey, Dad, you're being mean or you're being rude, or Mom, you're not. You just say fruits of the Spirit. And we all just pause and reflect on, what am I doing? What am I saying? And is it in alignment with the fruits of the Spirit? And the kids can't be disciplined for saying fruits of the Spirit to the parents, right? So the kitchen table can be a classroom, but we do have to get everybody to the table.
It's critical, man. I tell you, one of the things that we did that's probably pretty rare. Leadership starts with the leader, right? And so whatever I want from the people that I'm leading, they need to first see it in me, right? And so one of those is transparency and vulnerability. And so every Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, we meet in the living room. It's called family morning meeting. Every Saturday at 10 o'clock, we meet in the living room. And you couldn't have a cell phone. You couldn't have anything that would distract you, right? And so here's how the meeting started. Everybody would sit around in the living room. I said, thank you guys for coming to the meeting. How did Daddy do last week leading the family? Let's talk about it. I wanted some feedback. How can I get better as a leader, right? If they can see me being vulnerable, if they can see me willing to take criticism that's coming out of love, guess what that does? It's reciprocal. Now they're better able to take it. They are better able to take criticism and correction because they see that the leader is able to take correction and criticism. So everything that we want from them, they need to first see in us. And when they can see it in us, it increases our influence in them. And it just was a game changer for us because now I've created a table where it's okay to be vulnerable. So now no matter what they're going through, they're okay coming to me talking about it.
Yeah.
Right? Because your children are going to talk. As a leader, you create the environment that dictates who they talk to. And if you can't be vulnerable with them, they're going to go talk to their friends.
Right.
They're not talking to them.
And then you lose influence.
All
right. So I said that was the last question. However, I want to do some a quick fire. So just answer the first thing that pops into your head to these questions. We'll see. It's about 4 or 5 of them, okay?
Okay. We'll try. We'll see how bad I fail.
You're going to do well. Okay. First one, quick fire. Favorite leadership book other than a Maxwell book?
All right. That's all the books that I read. Failing Forward.
Okay. Got it. All right. Next. Best advice you've ever received as a leader?
Oh, man, that's a good one. There's no such thing as failure, only lessons.
It's a good one. Okay. Most misunderstood leadership trait. I feel like you're going to have a good answer for this.
Oh, man. The most misunderstood leadership trait is, I think, the character of the leader. I think that's misunderstood. The leader must have excellent character. Yeah, I think that would be my answer.
Okay. One scripture every leader should live by.
Oh, my goodness. Be ye a doer of the word, not just a hearer.
All right. How can people get in contact with you? How can we find you to know how we can get more of this wisdom that you're just spewing out today?
You can find me on TikTok. I'm calling myself Mr. Food for Thought. So if you type in Mr. Food for Thought, I'll pop up on TikTok. I'm on Facebook, just Richard Hellen on Facebook. I'm on Amazon. So if you put in Richard E. Hellen, Hellen is spelled with 2 L's, all the books I've ever written will just pop up. So those are the 3 major platforms you guys can find me on.
All right. Any shout out to wife or anybody else?
Shout out to my wife, my kids. Got a beautiful wife at home. Her name is Kim. Got a good daughter at home. Her name is Kanisha. My son is in the Air Force. His name is Jahar. We have another daughter in Georgia. Her name, we call her Nunu. So I say hello to all you guys. Appreciate you guys' support. Love you guys. And I'll see you in a little bit.
All right. And look, I appreciate all of you as well for sharing Richard with us. Yeah, he is definitely a wealth of wisdom. And I just love his heart and just what you stand for as a man. So thank you so much.
And likewise. Yeah, likewise.
And last one, legacy in one word.
Legacy. It's influence, right? Bruce Lee said it best. He said, if you live a life worth living, you never die.
Boom. There you go. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you've just been a part of an amazing conversation. Not only did we talk about kingdom over politics, but the family unit, how it all blends in together, because even politicians, many of them are business owners, but most of them have families. And what happens inside the home also impacts us outside the home. And I love how Richard shared at the end, he spoke about the leader. For everyone that you're leading, giving them permission to hold you accountable to what you're leading them on. And I think that's what we really need as a biblical perspective and lens. We are to be the mirror to the people we lead, but the Bible is our mirror. Yeah, James talks about it, right? It's the standard. So thank you so much for joining us today for this powerful episode on how leadership influences culture, especially from a biblical perspective. So thank you so much. We'll see you guys. Stay tuned to look at our Hands and Feet initiative, which is going to be amazing. God bless.